Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of NuReview. Today I'm going to be doing a review of the first Gary Numan album of the 21st century that is going to be 2000's Pure. Pure is the 17th studio album by Gary Numan and is going to be released on November 7th, 2000. Unlike the previous two albums, Sacrifice and Exile, which were self-produced, Pure sees production being handled by Rob Holiday, Sulphur, and Monty. Rob is going to be contributing guitar and keyboards to the album, while Monty contributes drums, keyboards, and programming. Also, live members Richard Beasley and Steve Harris are going to contribute drums and guitar, respectively, while Gary is going to handle vocals, guitar, and keyboards on the album. Now, it does follow in the same vein as Sacrifice and Exile instrumentally, in the sense that it is another industrial rock album, but with Sacrifice and Exile, and this was something that I noted in the review videos to both of them, is that when you would listen to a song on Sacrifice or Exile, about a minute into it, you kind of got what the instrumentation of the album was going to be. It did not really change throughout the course of any given song. On Pure, there is much more varied instrumentation. Also, Pure is a much darker and heavier album than Sacrifice and Exile. Part of this has to do with the loss of Gary Numan's dog at the time, as well as a couple of miscarriages that his wife, Gemma, suffered during the recording process of the album, and there will be lyrics about that on the album. The album opens up with the title track, Pure, which begins with this very soft piano and synth string melody before the song just erupts into this barrage of guitar. It's very heavy, it's very in your face, and up to that point, this was probably the heaviest Gary Numan album that you would have heard if you were listening to all of his material chronologically. The song itself opens with the lines, "I want to feel you hesitate, I want to feel you pull away," and the way that Numan delivers it, it's sung, but it's kind of whispered. It's much more sinister sounding Gary Numan than we've heard before. Gary has said that lyrically he was trying to write the lyrics from the point of view of a rapist or a serial killer, and it shows. After we get a bit of more heavy instrumentation, the song does calm down a bit, and we're kind of waiting for a chorus to come in. It's probably a bit of a calm chorus, but then Gary lets out a cry of, "Hey, bitch," and it is large, and it's anthemic, and it's aggressive, and it's pretty good. And it's shocking, and it's full of anger, and it just really draws you into this song. And I would go so far as to say that this is probably Gary Numan's best opening song since This Wreckage on Telecon. An interesting note about this song is that it did originally begin as a updated version of the song Friends from the original Two-Way Army album. And it is also an amazing live song. I've seen him do this maybe 3 or 4 times, and each time he does it, it's just fucking phenomenal. Up next we have Walking with Shadows, which opens with some dissonant beeps and glitch sound effects. It almost sounds like something that we would have heard on the Exile album. We get some throbbing bass coming in. The instrumentation, it's a little bit more restrained, not as heavy as Pure. Gary opens the song with the lines, "All my life they've been here waiting for you," and the instrumentation, it doesn't quite really pick up until the chorus, when it just all comes in and it's very heavy. Gary singing, "All they want is your purest sin." There's some deep piano notes that are played during the second verse, and just as an aside, production-wise, this song alone, just production-wise, mind you, is much better than anything that was presented to us on the Sacrifice or the Exile albums. And as the song goes on, there are more beeping and hissing sound effects that are added, and it really gives the song a feel of menace that was sorely missing on anything on the previous two albums. The third song on the album is Rip, which was the only single released from the album, which is a very odd choice because of the lyrical themes of the song, as well as the instrumentation. It opens up with a slow drum beat, which picks up kind of about halfway through the first verse. Now, lyrically, the song could alternatively be about Jesus Christ in a literal sense, or it could be about Gary Numan's disdain for organized religion, which is presented bare for all the world to see in what is arguably the best single line on the entire album when Gary sings, "I'll rip the skin off God's face." Instrumentally, it's a bit more sparse and brooding. It's similar to Walking with Shadows. We do get some chugging guitar as the song goes on, but the chorus of Gary singing, "Hey, hey, hey, I've done nothing to you," makes the song stand out a little bit more to me than Walking with Shadows. The fourth song is One Perfect Lie, which opens with the same piano instrumentation as we heard in the title track. It's joined by some synth strings and some bass, and it keeps going, but then all of it drops out except for the piano for the first verse. We're bordering ballad territory here as far as tempo goes. There is a very killer guitar line that sticks out to me during the chorus. There's a very nice keyboard or synth lead during the second verse. However, the song just is not that memorable to me. From what we've heard so far, this would probably be my least favorite song. Up next we have My Jesus, which is another atmospheric song. There's lots of synth swells and more beeping and hissing sound effects going on in the background. We get a gentle piano melody played. When the lyrics do start, about 90 seconds into the song, Gary is singing about his Jesus, saying that his Jesus is like a tortured memory and like a fear that haunts me, before we do get yet another anthemic, large, swelling chorus with the line, "I'm praying for my soul," and the instrumentation becomes a little bit more frantic as he's singing it, and it does draw you in yet again. It's a more simplistic song, especially lyrically, but damn, that chorus. And the bridge during the song, Gary is whispering, "It's so warm inside of you." It's genuinely creepy. Next we have Fallen, which is an instrumental song. It's centered around this fragile feeling piano that is soon met with a simple kick drum beat and some stuttering synthesizers that come in. Halfway through it becomes very bass heavy. We're treated to some backmasked vocals that Gary is singing, but it feels too short. The song really is only a couple of minutes long. I just wish it was a little bit more fully developed. The next song is Listen to My Voice, which opens with this very distorted synth, and you get the sense that it's going to be a faster song right off the bat, and I feel like if any song was going to be released as a single for this album, it should have been Listen to My Voice. Now, again, lyrically, it is very anti-religion. Gary is singing that the one you call Messiah is a lie, and that the God you love is dead, and the thing that took his place has already died. The instrumentation builds up under his voice, and finally, when the chorus does break, Gary is singing, "It will send angels, send black angels for you." The instrumentation, I mean, it just opens up into this wall of guitars and harsh keyboards and distorted synths, and it's awesome. The vocal melody is memorable, the chorus is memorable, the instrumentation is memorable, and I would say that next to the title track, this is probably my favorite song on the entire album. And during the last chorus, all the instrumentation drops out under Gary's voice except for these soft synth pads, and I'm in heaven. The eighth song is A Prayer for the Unborn, which, in case you can't tell by the title, is inspired by the miscarriages that Gary's wife Gemma did suffer during the making of this album. Now, this is probably the most played song live from this album, despite the fact that when Gary plays it live, he performs a remixed version of it that appears on the Hybrid CD that he came out with after the release of this album. The song begins with a stuttering beat and ominous synth pads. The instrumentation, it's very restrained. There's not a lot going on. Gary sings, "So I prayed, but you weren't listening," asking if God was too busy making miracles or doing something else to be able to help Gemma bring this pregnancy to full term. Later, once this drum beat comes into the song, Gary sings, "So she died, but you were somewhere else," and his anger is very clear. Like you can tell he's angry during this song. He's angry during this song. Finally, the instrumentation bubbles up and it all comes to a head. Gary proclaiming, "I'd spit on your heaven if I could find one to believe in." This is a heavy song in every sense of the term, and it's one of the most personal songs that Gary Numan has ever recorded. Up next we have Torn. Torn has another ominous opening. It reminds me of Rip in that sense. Gary sings, "You could rip me, you could leave me torn and cold, would you like that?" But, you know, as cool of a line as that is, because it's pretty cool, this song doesn't really do that much for me. I mean, it just kind of feels like Rip Part 2. There's a guitar line in it that I would say actually is the same guitar line from Rip. I mean, and unfortunately, it's probably the least memorable song on the album to me. And then we have Little in Vitro. Again, from the title, you can tell that this is yet another song about the miscarriages that Gemma suffered during the making of this album. And I mean, it's a very heavy, personal subject, and you know, if this is something that Gary had to write about and sing about to get off of his chest, I do understand. I do personally, though, wonder if to perform songs like Little in Vitro or A Prayer for the Unborn live, if that's not really the most therapeutic thing that you could be doing. That's just an aside. That's just an aside. That's just my opinion. The song opens with a very tender piano line and these very choir-like synths, which is going to be the core instrumentation of the song. Gary laments, "If only miracles happened every day. If only I could believe in something." Very simple drum beat starts during the second verse as Gary asks, "How in the world can they say that you're at peace?" And again, this song with A Prayer for the Unborn are just gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching. They're very heavy, very depressing songs, given the subject matter. And then finally, Gary asks, "How in the world can we live without you?" before there's this just explosive barrage of guitar that sees the song out. Now, I do wish that could go on a little bit longer, but as it stands, Little in Vitro is a pretty good song. Finally, the final song on the album is I Can't Breathe. It opens with a quiet choir synth. There's some bass notes before a kick drum comes in, which eventually transforms into this very crushing industrial beat as the song continues. The lyrics do harken back a bit to the song Deadliner from the Sacrifice album, in that they both deal with this fear of dreams and sleep and not being able to, well, breathe. This song does have a bit more paranoid and claustrophobic feel to it. Gary is singing about how he's scared of mirrors and that he'd hide in shadows, but the shadows talk to him. And of course we do get another huge anthemic chorus where Gary sings, "I'm so scared I can't breathe." The instrumentation, again, all this fucking barrage of guitar, and it's just this crushing, frantic feeling and these harsh synths, and the song is a very appropriate end to the Pure album. It does help to sum up instrumentally and lyrically what this album is about. And that's Pure. Now, Pure is... I'm trying to think of the right way to say it. As far as production goes, I know I already said this, but bear with me. As far as production goes, I would say that this is a better album than both Sacrifice and Exile. Now, as far as content goes, I would still say that Sacrifice and Exile are a little bit better albums than Pure, which is not to say that Pure is a bad album. Um, as far as Gary Numan albums go, this is going to be one of his better ones. Following the kind of repetitive instrumentation and dated production of the last couple of albums, this really is a breath of fresh air. Now, this is not really an album that I go back to very often. Well, let me rephrase that. This is an album that I go back to, but not with the... I don't do it the same amount that I do with Exile or Sacrifice. Part of that has to do with the fact that despite the fact that there is better production on this album, I would say that the songs are a bit more samey on this album than they were on the previous two. You know, Rip and Torn are practically interchangeable. The instrumental track Fallen doesn't really do particularly much for me. Which isn't to say that there aren't some very great moments and very great songs on this album. Songs like the title track, Walking with Shadows, I Can't Breathe, Listen to My Voice. Some of these songs stand up, I would say, with some of Gary Numan's best. Now, between this album and the next album, Jagged, we get the longest break between Gary Numan albums, which is 6 years, which is ridiculous. Um, Now, I'm just trying to think of anything else personally I could say about Pure. I love the album artwork. The album artwork is phenomenal. I love it. Gary Numan standing up there like a scarecrow. I mean, it's great. Um, I just wish I had more to say about the album. It's not that it's an unmemorable album. It is. You know, there's like 2 or 3 live albums culled from this tour that he did for it. Um, it's good. It's a very solid album. Favorite songs from it, I would say again, would be the title track, Pure, Listen to My Voice. As of late, I've really been enjoying A Prayer for the Unborn more than I had previously. Um, as well as I would say I Can't Breathe. I would say those are my 4 favorite songs on the album. Least favorite songs would probably be Fallen, One Perfect Lie, and Torn. Now again, it's not that they're bad songs, they're much better than even the best material found on Strange Charm or Metal Rhythm, but stacked next to the songs that immediately precede and follow them, I just don't feel like they stand up. I feel like if these 3 songs in particular had been cut from the track listing, Pure would be a much more lean, potent, angry album, and it would probably make much more of an impact than it does for me as it is. Now, again, like I said, it is a strong Gary Numan album. I don't want to give it a 7 because I like it that much and I enjoy the best moments on it that much. I would probably give this album an 8 out of 10. Um, yeah, it's good. I would say that if you were looking for a Gary Numan album that encompassed kind of the core of his anti-religion lyrics, as well as kind of was production-wise the highlight of his kind of first 3 or 4 comeback albums, this would probably be the first one to listen to. I would say listen to this before Sacrifice or Exile if you're getting into them. So that's my review of Pure. Up next, I am going to be doing a review of Jagged as soon as I can. I'm going to get it up very soon. I know that there's been a little bit of silence on my end. I do apologize. I am trying to put these videos up as soon as I can. But until then, this is Tyler King with NuReview, Pure by Gary Numan. I'm giving it a solid 8 out of 10. Thank you for watching. I will see you next time. And it's starting to rain. That's very appropriate for this album. I'll see you guys next time.